Well, I mean, there are various influences both as performing musician and as composer. And one person that sort of lives in both camps is certainly Paul Hindemith, who, you know, for viola players is kind of a trailblazer in many ways, but also as a composer. And just for someone to have made and had the career that he had as a composer from the viola, I always found particularly inspiring, even before I came into composing myself. So he was, you know, a significant figure for me as I got to know his work and play his viola works. I've always likened composition to filmmaking because it sort of takes place in the unfolding of time, and I'm no great film aficionado, but I'm a film buff, and I do love film. I just wonder whether that might have been somewhere I might have gone had I not been taken over by music. Well, on the plane coming over from Australia this last time, I ended up watching the entire first season of The Newsroom. I'd been a fan of The West Wing, and so, you know, I just got into, you know, Aaron Sorkin's stuff, and that was fascinating. Certainly passed the time on a long-haul flight. I don't think it's quite on the level of The West Wing, but it's got some great moments, I must say. And, you know, it's fascinating to see that his idealism now has moved from politics to, well, it's just next door really to current affairs and the media. But yeah, fascinating stuff. I also, you know, I like the way he, you know, takes stories out of the real world, and only months later they end up somehow fictionalized and thematicized in that way. It's very, very interesting. Oh, look, there are all sorts of pieces that are underrated, and actually somebody recently just asked me about pieces by other Australian composers, and I mean, our music doesn't get out nearly as much as it deserves to, you know, with some wonderful composers, people like Anthony Pateras, James Ledger, Lisa Lim, George Lentz. There are some wonderful voices in Australia that we, you know, that aren't heard outside of Australia nearly enough. And, you know, it's always interesting and a delight to be able to introduce audiences to music that they don't know. There's more happening down under than just, you know, cricket and footy. I'd have to say, actually, the best advice I was ever given was by my wife Heather, who at the time, around the time of writing Voices of Angels, that is 96, 97, as composing was taking up more and more of my headspace, it was her advice to me to also put things aside that, you know, took away from that headspace and cluttered it, and just to focus on one thing. I read this interview recently with Barenboim, in which he talks about, or he's asked by this interviewer, you know, how do you possibly manage to do all the things that you do? And he simply said, well, I only ever do one thing at a time, and whether that be eating lunch, I won't then multitask, as you know, as is so much the mode and the fashion nowadays, but just concentrate on one thing at a time. And in a sense, our conversations back then were honing in on that same idea. Just then, when you do just one thing at a time, you can do all sorts of things, but you've got to give your brain the space to concentrate on it fully and not split yourself.